Now, I want to move on to the US election. There's a lot still going on there. Some of the counts are proving to be very, very interesting. Some investigations into some minor counting and voting anomalies. We'll see where it all ends up. I want to bring in now Kosha Gada, who heads up the tech firm Recastled, and there's a bit of an analyst of US politics as well. Good to speak to you again, Kosha. Look, we know the big tech giants have been pretty much anti-Donald Trump. But when we see Big Pharma announce this promising news on a vaccine a week after the election, it makes you wonder that they didn't want to give Donald Trump any help either.
Yes, I think that's been one of the big stories of the day, and Chris, good to be with you again. And we'll never know the parallel future, obviously, but I think the timing has definitely been curious, and I think in their statement there was some mention that they actually were kind of ready to go a couple of weeks ago and sort of held it back. But I don't think that probably it made that much of a difference, but we don't really know.
Oh, gee, I don't know. Donald Trump was saying day after day that a vaccine announcement is imminent, and his critics were saying that's rubbish. He's talking nonsense. If that announcement had been made a week out, it certainly would have strengthened his argument. But as you say, as we both know, we will never know. Now, as the counting continues in Arizona, some of the pundits, some of the major media organisations have given Arizona and the 11 electoral college votes to Joe Biden, taking him above 270. But others are now still saying that that's undecided, that Donald Trump is coming back in the count and that he may still win Arizona. What's your reading?
Yes, and I think it also ties, actually, just one more point on your previous question, Chris, that I think it would have made a difference. I think my point was that the 71 million people that came out to vote for President Trump kind of knew and were very confident in his handling of the virus and a whole host of other issues. And that ties into the question you just posed now, which is that Joe Biden is not currently the president-elect. That's actually an illusion, because the Constitution of the United States provides that the election is not certified until the state legislatures certify it. And this is a contested election. The U.S. has a long history of contested elections, going back to Samuel Tillman versus Rutherford Hayes in 1876, all the way to Bush v. Gore in just 2000, where Gore contested and litigated just one state of Florida, and he got 37 days, or it took 37 days to do that before the result was certified. So Arizona, I think, is an example of that. They're still counting, and the lead has only been shrinking since Election Day. And then there's some pretty serious allegations that the Trump legal team is bringing in these key other states, battleground states, that are still not officially certified. And they've got some pretty, I think, reasonable claims that they're making, both on a mathematical, statistical basis, as well as a legal basis, that are unfolding as we speak.
Yeah, look, it is fascinating because there's only tens of thousands of votes in most of these states, and I'm not saying this will happen, but it is not inconceivable that with the count in Arizona, it could go Donald Trump's way. And if some of these legal challenges knock out votes or bring more votes back in the other states, it's a simple matter of you win Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina and Arizona, and Donald Trump actually holds on to the presidency. And the amazing thing is you're talking there about, in total, what, 60 or 70,000 votes?
Right. I think it's less than 100,000 votes out of a denominator of 150 million votes that have been cast. So this is an incredibly close election. A number of states are going to head to automatic mandatory recounts because the margin of difference is so low. And there are some of the other serious concerns on the mathematical side. You know, to believe this, and based on the current vote totals, it suggests that Biden got more than 8.9 to 9 million more votes than President Obama, who was a historical anomaly and everybody kind of acknowledges was a rock star in politics. So he outperformed Obama, and only in these 5 states specifically. So, and that translates to really high, unprecedented turnouts in the U.S. where voting is not mandatory. So 90+% turnout in these states. So that's why they're saying, okay, you know what, it's possible, but not statistically likely. And so that's why they're investigating how many of those votes may be legal or illegal. And we've got about 30 to 40 days to figure it out.
Yeah, people shouldn't dismiss this because they've never had these voting rules before. These were new voting rules brought in for the pandemic. They differed from state to state, but in a number of crucial states, they actually sent out applications for mail-in votes to every voter. Now, that creates a lot of potential for vote harvesting and for fraud. So you've got to look at this stuff. And one thing I'm going to be watching carefully is whether the Democrats push to make some of these changes permanent, because they're supposed to be just temporary for this pandemic election. Do you think there'll be a push, especially from the Democrats, to try and have this sort of loose mail-in arrangement made permanent?
Yes. Yes, I think there has been a push. Two things. One is extending when you can vote, where it's no longer. I, as an American, kind of find it a little bit sad because, you know, Election Day, the first Tuesday in November in every month, is a storied moment in American tradition, and I think it sort of gets cheated by extending that you can vote for a whole month beforehand, and then you can keep counting votes for weeks and weeks afterwards, and nobody knows the result until a very long time, and that opens up vulnerabilities to irregularities. So they have been pushing, and I think that was a big strategy in this, and you see it with the results, where on Election Day, President Trump was winning handily all these states with in-person votes, and then just overnight and over the subsequent 2 to 3 days, the mail-in votes have been dramatically in favor of Biden. So I think they are pushing that. The other interesting thing, too, though, where the vulnerability comes in is with software. So there's been some reporting of a glitch in Michigan, for instance, that's been found, where the tabulation software flipped 6,000 votes from Trump to Biden, and that software is used across the country, including every one of these battleground states. And I know in 2016, the vulnerability of election hacking and like electronic hacking was a big issue that the Democrats did raise, and so maybe there will be some bipartisan reform on that, but who knows?
Fascinating stuff. There's a lot to go through yet. It ain't over until the Electoral College sings. Thanks for joining us, Kosha.
Thank you.
Kosha Garda there. I think this is a big issue, not just for the US, but for Australia. This extension of pre-poll voting, having the polls open for weeks before Election Day. I think that is a bad development. I hate it here in Australia, and we've seen the same issue in the US. Have the election on Election Day. Lots can change in the last 2 weeks of a campaign. We've seen that so many times in various elections. I think we should turn up and vote on Election Day, here in the US, everywhere.